Hi, my name is Shiloh, and I beat the often path by never quitting when it was unbelievably difficult. And I'm so excited to tell you why.
Welcome back to the Beat the Often Path podcast. I'm your host, Ross Palmer. Joining me today is Shiloh Johnson, the founder and CEO of ComplYant, a digital tax assistant platform that's raised over $10 million in funding to date. I know what you're thinking. What is more fun than talking about taxes? Woohoo! Well, Shiloh's personal journey is incredible. Let me tell you, what you'll soon find out. I'll let her tell you in her own words. But the upshot is this. In her time as a CPA, she noticed that most small business owners were making the same mistakes over and over again. So she soon realized that there was a giant gap in the market, and she got to work building a platform to help business owners such as myself be a little less stupid. All right. The stupidity part maybe just applies to me, but everyone could use a little help. This episode is great for anybody who's thinking about starting a business or bringing an idea into the world. And let me tell you, Shiloh Johnson is truly an inspiration. So here she is, the founder of ComplYant. All right, welcome to the show, Shiloh. We've got somebody else in the greater LA area, although not right now. Right now, you're joining us from Austin, Texas. But explain a little bit about what that means. So tell us about what the struggles were and how you ended up where you are and where are you?
Oh, I don't know. I'm just tackling tech like a beast. So what has been impossibly hard is everything. So for starters, I was a teen mom. So I had my first kid when I was 17. So imagine being 22 with 3 children, putting yourself through college.
Nope.
And working full time and not having any help. Yep, did it for 4 years. Then I went and got a graduate degree in taxation. And then I jumped into corporate tax and did it for 15 years, sent all my kids to college, and then decided to start a tech company. And that's
unbelievable.
How I did it.
But you can't do that because you have to be young to start a tech company.
Oh, what? I am young. Do you see this?
No. Those are the rules, Shiloh. Yeah, there's rules to this game.
You must be 18.
You can't break the
fresh
formula.
Out of high school.
Yeah, exactly. You've got to be wearing a hoodie. You can't dress too nice because then they'll know you're not smart. There's rules to this.
Patagonia vests only.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I have never believed in rules. My life is an example of that. I think those are just, rules are more like guidelines. And you find ways to make things fit into what you need them to be. You can't exclude yourself from the possibility of trying something because you don't fit. Like, of course I don't fit. I've never fit. And I'm still doing it. Come join me.
That's right. And you've obviously done some incredible things. The intro will have explained that. But I have a question. So some people seem to be interested. You mentioned you got a degree in tax. Have you always been interested in numbers? Some people love this. Some people hate it. Some people can't stand it. I'm probably in the hate it and can't stand it camp. How did you find yourself there?
On accident, truthfully. I actually was going to be a lawyer. I was a poli-sci major. I was going to go to law school. And then I had a boss, a woman by the name of Anita Dewan. She was like the VP of tax for this large retail company. And she was my boss. And she said, change your major and go into tax. And I was like, why would I do that? That's horrible. And she said, because there aren't very many of you, us as in minority women, and you could make a lot of waves. And obviously there are diversity quotas that have to be filled, and you're very intelligent and you're good at this. So do it, because you will always have a job and you will never have to worry about working. And I was like, okay, I'm pragmatic. I'll try it. I just took an accounting class. I wasn't going to change. I just took an accounting class. I loved it. I felt like I knew like the secret codes to like figure life out because nobody knows accounting. And so as I learned and it was relatively easy, I was like, oh, yeah, superpower. I'm doing this.
So she was right.
Yeah.
Was the advice spot on? Totally.
Spot on, 100%. Not too far after that, we went into the first recession. Not only did I not have to worry about my job, I ended up getting a promotion and a raise. And everybody left and right was like losing their homes, losing their jobs. It was crazy.
Unbelievable.
Yeah.
So the superpower, that is a great insight because it sheds light on the fact that so few people know how this stuff works. Just in general, And certainly, I mean, looking at your bio, you focus obviously on small business owners, of which I am one. So we'll get into that in just a second. But people who aren't small business owners or entrepreneurs at all, they generally know pretty much nothing about this stuff. Because for the average person, their tax time routine is just, I get a piece of paper from here, from my single employer, I punch the numbers over here into TurboTax, and that's the end of that. No other calculations needed. Obviously, if you're a business owner, tax time becomes a very different thing, right?
Very different. Yeah,
so why do you think so few people know about this, and why is it a superpower?
Oh gosh, I think our education system is terrible. That's probably why so few people know about it. I have so many thoughts about education reform, goodness. But I certainly hate the fact. So tax code in general is written for small businesses. It's written to promote and support small businesses. It's also written, the most code is written in favor of small business. But small business understands it the least. And I was just like, oh, I could do something here. This is a gap. I could fill it. And so hence how the product came to be. But I certainly feel like there are a lot of areas in general that we don't have practical knowledge around. We have practical knowledge around like pi, like, I don't know, Pythagorean theorem or whatever you learned in math class that you will never need again. But there is like practical knowledge around just like, okay, I'm going to start an influencer consulting company. What do I do with my tax? And everyone's just like, I don't know. You keep it. I don't know. You do something in a savings account. Who knows? Everyone's like Googling blogs, trying to figure out. It's just, the education system is a mess, I tell you.
Well, I'll tell you what you do. You get through a year, you just barely cover your bills, and then it comes to April, and then you have a giant number that you owe, and then you panic about why didn't I save any of that money?
That sounds exactly like every small business owner I've ever met.
And then you get a notification that you were supposed to renew your business tax license, and you haven't, and it's 2 years past due, and then you get a bill, and then that bill says you owe just $2,000. No big deal. Just a light penalty, and then you panic some more. I mean, that's been my experience.
You and everyone else. Certainly the problem we set out to solve. We just felt like there were so many businesses. I ran into a founder. She runs, a small restaurant franchise. She's like a part of a franchise. You would think they would have given her lots of information around operations management, and that just didn't exist. She was like charging sales tax and keeping it. And I was just like, oh, you want to go to jail? Like, that's not how this works. So if you're listening and this is you, you're not alone.
Yeah. Well, like you said, education reform. It always shocked me that we just didn't learn. It's no secret that we just don't learn, certainly in America, any of the basics or the fundamentals of what becomes the most important thing in your entire life. You don't learn basic accounting. You don't learn how these tax systems work. You're just on your own. And I think the idea is, if you're very cynical, that it's just funneling you into getting a job and not really encouraging you to be entrepreneurial. Because when you do that, you have to learn everything on your own. You have to, like you said, you could look at blogs, you could look at podcasts, you can read books, watch videos, do what you need. But all of that you have to learn yourself. And unfortunately, most of it is trial and error. Most of it is you just try to make money, you try not to get in trouble, and then something bad happens, and then you wonder why, and then learn a very painful lesson, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there is some space too, though, for us to consider how we think about informing the entire next generation, right? If you have Gen Z kids, or if you're Gen Z listening, like they are doing things so completely different than what we experienced, at least when I was young. Like, no one even thought about working for themselves. Everyone was focused on going to college and having a career. And so these kids are like, we don't want to participate in anything that you all are doing. And we're massively missing the mark by not supporting them with real education that will impact how they're going to live. They're not going to go work at a factory. They're not going to go work at the shoe shine guy. They're going to go and start some like YouTube channel and make a bazillion dollars or whatever it is they're going to do, like teaching people how to tie their shoes uniquely. Who knows? And it's going to be great. And that's what these kids do. And they're finding their whole lives in that space. And if we don't support them, we miss massive opportunity, I think, shifting the way we think about things.
Yeah, and we've seen that in the polls, and now that they're voting, we've seen that their desire to just not participate in these standard structures is extremely strong. And who can blame them, because they're smart enough to understand how it works. They're smart enough to understand how they're being exploited, and then they don't want to be exploited, and we're surprised hardly a shock, right?
Exactly right.
So you go to school, you get your degree, you
Yeah.
study
Yeah.
tax. Then you
Yeah.
became a CPA, or you started
Yeah.
doing that. You became an independent professional.
Not right away. So
Okay.
yeah, undergrad in accounting, master's in tax, and while I was doing all of that, I was working in corporate simultaneously. So I got licensed. I stayed in corporate. So the difference, for those of you who don't spend your time knowing the wonders of tax, corporate tax is basically you work in house for a large corporation that houses their own tax functions. Most businesses outsource it to firms to do it for them. Large corporations do it in house. And so I was a part of those sort of in-house tax teams for companies at about 4 or 5 large companies that exist
Whoa.
currently. And when you do that, you follow the life cycle of the business from inception, from idea all the way to like, you know, completion. And they'll come to you with a new line of business. We're going to start selling t-shirts out of these 5 states. What do we need to do? And then your sole job is to figure out all the tax compliance requirements, everything that they have to, all licensing, any sort of permits that need to be purchased, all of that is your job. So you go into sort of tax research mode. And then you return back to them completed, created accounts. They're fully compliant. You're telling the retail division so they can put the POS systems in place, and then you go and file and you participate in audits. This is happening all the time at every large corporation. When I stepped away from that, the last 3-ish years of that 15, I was running my own side practice, and I was just thinking like, I know I did this for like Technicolor or like Airmark or whatever, but like who's doing this for small businesses? And then you're like, oh yeah, no one. No, 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 no one's doing this. And the cost, right? Like you'd be shocked how many incentives corporations get to take advantage of because they just have the knowledge and they have the staff to help them sort of partake in like all of the incentives, all of the tax cuts that you just, small businesses don't know about because they don't have that same support. And I was like, how can I productize and then make that available to like every small business I can find, which has been basically our mission.
Well, your
Yeah.
journey, you left the corporate world, you were
Yep.
doing a side thing, and then that became a main
Yeah.
thing. What I'm very
Yeah.
interested in is the progression of entrepreneurship, how, you start with one idea. First, you leave the corporate job,
Yeah.
then you go do this thing, and then
Yeah.
you realize there's a gap, and then you go into something
Yeah.
else. I love that
Yeah.
journey as we learn more about what we want to do.
Yeah.
So let's start with what made you decide to leave the corporate job?
I participated in a tax audit with the state of glorious Texas. It was a sales tax audit. And the company I was working for, the initial audit assessment, which is just basically the bill they send you up front, was like 8 or 9 million. And so your job in audit is to defend why you think that number is wrong. And so you poke holes in all of their logic and you tell them this is all the mistakes you made. Here's what we actually did right. We don't owe this. That's what audit is. And
Hmm.
I participated and I ran it. I took that 8 million down to like 300,000. I didn't get anything. I just got like a good job. And I was like, where's my money? I should have got a piece of this. I want a bonus, a sandwich, I don't know, something. I was so disappointed. And immediately I was like, oh, no, no. A, I'm good at this. And B, I can do this myself. That was enough of the verification for me. And I literally just 2 weeks later, I put my notice in. I was like, no, thank you, but I think I'm done. And I told myself that I'm gonna give myself 6 months. I had 6 months of savings, enough to pay my bills, not even a lot of money. I was like, I can keep the lights on for 6 months. And if I don't get enough business to supplement my income, I'll just find another job, I'll go back. Didn't even take 6 months. It took 1 month, and I didn't just make the money, I ended up tripling it. And so I was like, okay, what am I gonna do now? I can go buy lots of cheese sandwiches, or I can figure out how to grow this, or I could do something else. And the way I think my brain just, I think naturally I'm like always thinking about ways to like innovate or process change. I love process and I'm always thinking about process change. And which got me sparking the idea of like, I'm getting all these clients coming to me with these crazy issues. If I could get them much earlier and help them so that they don't get to this point, like I can't help everyone. How do I help the masses? Tech. Okay, let's productize this so we can get to a lot of people, get them day one, and then help them sort of along the path until they can get to a really qualified accountant. So that it was almost immediate. I don't even think I worked at my practice for more than like a couple of months. And then I saw the problem and I was like, done. And so simultaneously, I did both. I ran the practice and I built ComplYant on my own for like 4 months. And then I was off to the races. I held on to ComplYant long enough. I mean, I held on to my practice long enough until ComplYant. I got my first bit of fundraise. And when I did my fundraise, that was enough. Then I was like, okay, I could let go of my clients. So I sold my book of business and started running the company.
So was that process software development, or what were you actually building on your own during that time?
Yeah, so I, again, am the kind of person that thinks that she can do everything. So I was like, I'm going to learn how to code. I totally did. I can tear up a command line, but that's all I can do. Like, don't ask me to do, no, don't ask me about colors, shapes, no front end. I can't give you any of that. All I can do is command line. And I said immediately, I'm not moving fast enough. And from what I know about tech, speed is your ally. And I wasn't going to be able to grassroots like build this. So I was going to have to like either hire someone or get a co-founder. And so my entire life I've been in accounting at this point, and I'm like, I don't know anyone in tech. I'm not going to get a co-founder that I think I could trust. It's like a marriage. So I was like, I'll just like hire someone. Yeah, and someone will build this. And then like 2 fail hires later, someone qualified came in and helped get it at least to like moving function version. So
That's such a good point, because you often hear that you should have a co-founder. That's the common story. However, I've read several books from maybe even more successful people, some billionaires, who say don't ever do that. Always be a solo founder, because it is like a marriage, and it can be like a bad marriage. And if you have a 50-50 partnership, they often end in a stalemate, or something goes sour, or they don't have the same values or work ethic that you have, which is just so easy to understand if you've met people ever in your life.
Yes.
So how do you feel as a solo founder? Again, we're breaking all the rules here. Solo founder in tech.
Perpetual rule breaker. It's the hardest job I've ever had, second to raising kids. I absolutely, every day I'm like, I'm so tired. But I also absolutely love it. And I don't think I would have done it any differently. Because the kind of person that I would have needed to support me as a true co-founder would have been someone that mirrored my similar style or skill set. And I don't. I'm a rare bird. Not many people want to do. My work ethic is unmatched. Not that people don't want to work this hard. I tell people all the time, no one wants to work this hard. That's my saying. So I just was like, it wasn't worth it to me to sacrifice. I had the idea. I had like done all the pre-work. I set everything up. The only thing I didn't have was coding. I mean, like I was like, I can do this. And then, if I can't, we'll fall a bit and see if we can't get somebody to help us up. We'll figure it out. And it never needed to happen. I had one investor say that we only invest in companies that have co-founders. It has never been a problem since. And that investor actually came back to me, was like, biggest mistake we ever made. We're so sorry we didn't invest in you. And I was like, sorry. But yeah, I mean, it's hard, but I don't regret it. I like that, I kind of make the decisions. And I think I would have felt a disservice having someone that I consider a partner not carrying partner weight. That would have upset me.
Oh, for sure. I have no doubt. So knowing that you needed funding, how did you go about that process? What were the first steps you took to get that?
Funny story, I actually was going to bootstrap. I read every bootstrapping book, listened to all the bootstrapping podcasts. I wasn't going to raise money because I was like, I don't need to actually be like sort of catapulting tech. I can meander a bit and then we'll sell it and it will be fine. That'll be our retirement strategy. But what ended up happening was I participated in this incubator run out of LA called Grid 110. And the founder of the incubator, Mickey Reynolds, she's like, you're like incredible, right? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just out here tinkering with tax numbers. I don't know. And then one of the other partners that ran the program was an investor. And he's like, we actually want to invest in you. So if you want to raise money, we want to give you some money. And I was like, oh, now I have to figure out if this is my new strategy. So then I had to go like read more books about taking money. Note to audience, read books. And then after reading,
read books. Try it.
Exactly right. Try it.
It's great.
Try it now. And so after doing that and just having a few conversations with investors, and they were like, actually, you do have a venture backable business and you can do this and you would do very well, but you just have to decide if you want to. And so reading those books just kind of helped me figure out if I'm going to do this, that just means that I'm going from like meandering along and then eventually will sell to like rocket ship straight up into the right and then much faster. So once I like settled with that idea, I was like, all right, let's do it. And so the gentleman that I mentioned that was a part of the Grid 110 program, it was his first fund. And so we became their first investment. He then went and opened up his network to me and said, here, meet this person. She's pretty dope. Give her some money. And so I was able to galvanize a little bit of a round relatively quickly, thanks to them.
That's crazy. And at the time of me doing my research, I think you had raised something like 5.5 million. Has that number changed? Is that roughly accurate?
That number has changed. You're going to get exclusive information. We're not going to announce this anywhere, but I will just say it here. We've raised about 13 million. So
wow. So the demand has just gone up.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about a recession. And the only way that it is beautiful is the uniqueness that comes from it, the ingenuity that comes from it creates opportunity for us. Everybody is starting something. Everyone needs more money. Everyone is in this like crazy hell of a time and they don't want to keep working for the 9 to 5. And they're like, how do I make money? And I'm like, I don't know, but once you figure it out, come over here. So it's been working really well for us.
One of the things that I got from your bio is that there were situations where people, when you were doing the CPA thing, when you were interfacing with clients on a more direct basis, you would say, okay, I can fix this for you, but it's going to cost you more money than you can afford. It's going to cost you a lot because I've got to bill hourly or however the price structure is. So a lot of people, that's a scenario that we can all relate to. So what are some of these what are some of the most common mistakes that a business, what categories of things do people make over and over again that you see?
A lot of them. There are a few. The most common, I think, surprisingly, actually, people are very timid about taking deductions. So some people are like, oh, can I really write this off or no? And they just kind of don't really understand what is available to them. And there are, are only a few categories and they're pretty broad, right? It's the products you use to like make your business grow. It's, the things you're doing while you're trying to make your business grow. And it's the services you need to help make your businesses grow. It's pretty simple, but people are very timid about doing it. And so they don't. They'll just like, well, here's the rent I paid. And so you did nothing else with your business over the last year. So being nervous to take those deductions, again, they're there for you. And as long as you have like, some justification for it, it's there for you to take. So you're costing yourself money. Don't do that. Another one is like not understanding that there is more than one type of tax. People think just like how, to your point earlier, like income tax or turbo tax is the only thing I need to worry about. There are actually 10 types of business tax. And every single one of those things are very expensive if you don't, comply within range. And so not understanding that, I think has been the biggest thing. People think that everything is fraud. And so like, oh, I just thought I was fraud, so I threw it away. It's a tax notice. It's not fraud and you need to pay it. And so just not knowing that there are lots of tax types that you need to comply with. The other one that's super common, people don't close their businesses down. So let's say like you operate for a year, it's trash, it doesn't go well. You're like, I'm done with this. No more hair weaving company. Let's let it go. They just walk away and they don't do anything. And you actually need to tell the state you're done. You need to tell the government, the federal government you're done. You need to tell the city that you're done. Because if you don't tell them, they assume that it's still open and they keep sending you notices and they want you to keep paying. And if you don't pay, now you're in trouble. And I've seen people go 8, 9, 10 years. I haven't operated that business in 10 years and they have 10 years of back tax to pay.
Yeah.
So that,
and in some states, it's obviously worse than others. Like in California, you have to pay $800 a year just to have an LLC. Tax. That says nothing of anything else. None of the other fees or taxes, just to exist. And in other states, they're like, come on, open 15 businesses. Who cares? We'll give you money. We'll give you 30.
Exactly.
Here in California, they're like, are you sure? Right. Do you really want to do this?
Exactly,
we're coming for you.
And they keep coming. That's what's trippy. That minimum tax you just mentioned, people think that like, oh, well, I didn't do business, so I don't have to pay. It doesn't matter. You stayed open. You have to continue paying until you tell them that you're closed.
So it's the structures that we have to set up. And when you have an account, first of all, setting up a business, setting up an LLC, setting up an S Corp, there are different structures that are available to you to run your business. And so much of it is just setting all of that up in the right way so that all of these
Mhm.
systems can work for you. And a lot of that seems very foreign to an individual. Say, oh, I can have a corporation and I can be an employee of my corporation. I can be on a payroll of my corporation. And that just sounds like voodoo to most of the people in the
Yeah.
world. It sounds like that's got to be a scam of some kind, but the reality is
Yeah.
that's just how it
No.
works. That's just what the
Yeah.
system is. And that when
Yeah.
you do that, you're like, oh, okay, I understand how I can structure it so that the payroll,
Yeah.
my personal things go over here, business
Yeah.
expenses go over there, and you can balance that together in a way and fine tune that in a way that is
Yeah.
different than people think, I think, when they're just starting out.
Yeah, and I've seen a lot of that information circle on the interwebs these latelys. Instagram, I call them my Instagram like accountants, where they love to give you like set up an LLC in your child's name, and then like
Your
get this
child.
thing in your dog's name, and like there's all these like weird
Yeah,
structures people are trying to do in some version of what you're saying.
right.
And in some of that noise, there's a ton of accuracy. And I think some people are starting to get hip to like, I don't 100% know what that structure is, but I know there's something I could do that's different than what I'm doing, which that's where we get to a space where knowledge becomes more free, because then people are starting to like, I don't know really what it is, but somebody over there is doing something. Somebody got like some insurance thing, and then they went and got an LLC, and then they went and got a FEIN, and then they got this. Some of that is not all true. Some of that you're not going to be able to buy a car on your
It might be a
FEIN the
scam.
first
Yeah.
second. Some of that might be a scam, but there is some truth in that. The way you should be thinking about your personal money versus your business money and separating that out. There's something there that we can toy with more, that can benefit us more, that we can keep more money in our pockets. And to your point, I think the more information we can share, the more that opens up.
So the last thing I want to touch on before we sort of
Mhm.
wrap up, I know you've got a flight to catch, but
Oh,
I was when the person who introduced you, she raised up a statistic that I did not know, but I'm sadly not too shocked about. But apparently, only 200 Black women founders have ever raised $1 million in venture capital.
yeah.
What has been your experience? I mean, at the very beginning, we talked about you said, "Oh, I'm in a new," because you went to tax based on a mentor's advice, and that proved to be
Yeah.
true. What has been your
Yeah.
experience in that world? Have you found it to be harsh? Have you found it to be accepting? And what is the reason for such a horrible statistic as that?
Yeah, it's probably less than 200. I think there's about
Less than
150 of us. I know them all. We're in a group. Yeah, it's pretty small.
150. Oh my!
Yeah, it's pretty small.
So what's
It,
going on?
I think a few things. Like tech is relatively very new, and the modeling that was set in place that ultimately produced what was success before looked a very specific way. So as we evolve, right, like and more, women are getting into business at a point when women were not in business before. More minorities are getting into business. In fact, Black women are starting businesses at a faster rate than any other subgroup. So as we evolve, we miss some of those cues and opportunities for growth, such that we keep trying to model what used to work, right? Like Steve
Mm,
Jobs and Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, they all look a certain way and they mirror a certain idea. So in the terms of like raising money, that hasn't been as difficult. What has been difficult has been like the belief in my ability to actually run the company successfully. Because again, CEOs don't look like me. CEOs look very specific. And so your ability to make tough decisions, your ability to, move fast, your ability to, grow and up and to the right and all the things that they say, like all of that gets challenged because you don't look like the model of what they think that success should. So you get really cool opportunities to kind of show up and show out and say, just because you believe that, I'm going to show you different and you're going to be so
mhm,
surprised. And then I'm going to be so great. And then I'm not going to take your calls. And so
mhm.
you kind of have to just muscle through it and decide that, like, I'm going to be one of those people that changes that number so that 20 years from now, that statistic is a far gone thing of the past. And you sort of muscle through. And there are still people with their biases, and there's not much I can do with that. But it can't stand in the way of me building. It can't stand in the way of the mission, which is I've got to get in, kick the door open so I can let 1 million more of me in behind me. So that's sort of the path I set my sights on, such that I don't get too bogged down with the statistics like, oh, they're probably not going to invest in me. No, you will. And if you don't, you're going to regret it.
Well, again, yeah, I can't thank you enough for sharing your time
For
and
sure.
some
It's been
laughs. It's been
fun.
an absolute pleasure. I know you got to go, but is there any parting piece of wisdom or just one thing you'd like to say to wrap up this show?
Yeah. I just, I gotta say, don't quit. It is impossibly easy to just stop. And you're tired and you hate it and you're broke and you can't see the light, but I promise you it's there. Just keep going. Even when it sucks, even when you don't see any like results and you haven't sold anything or you don't know, you hit a roadblock, just keep going. When you hit the roadblock, get creative. Don't quit.
I can think of no better way to end it than that. So we'll stop it right there. Thank you so much, Shiloh. It's been an absolute pleasure. Safe
Appreciate it.
travels. And with
Thank
that,
you.
the official podcast is over.